From our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., it's Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett, CEO for Brand Builder and creator of Tuesday Branding. Welcome to today's show. So, Akia, what's new?
Hey, it's Akia Garnett, and welcome to this week's edition of Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett. I'm so glad you could join us this week. We've got an exciting topic, and it's maybe a little scary as well, because it has to do with emergency preparedness, continuity planning, and what to do when it comes to emergencies that are sometimes out of our control, those things that we can see coming down the pipe and those things that we just have no idea are developing and snatching headlines, such as the Ebola virus. Now, I've been covering this story on the Akia Garnett Show and Tuesday Branding, and I will continue to bring news to the world regarding Ebola and what countries and companies are doing to help us reduce risks in the global economy. Now, last week I spent some time with Gabriel Williams, who is the Ministry Counselor for Press and Public Affairs at the Embassy of Liberia in Washington, D.C., and he and I talked about some of the outbreak centers or the quarantine centers that are in Liberia and a major undertaking that's taking place in Baltimore, Maryland, to get some supplies from here to West Africa to help the physicians and help the medical crews there administer the support to reduce the death rate there and to decrease the number of new cases that may develop as a result of unawareness and a lack of real information on how to prevent the spread of the virus. And as a result, we've also taken some time to bring to you an expert in continuity planning who is the president of Standfast Global LLC. His name is Brian McCrane, and he spends his time every day helping companies and organizations understand how to prepare or plan for the unknown. Hello there, Brian, and welcome to Big Thinking.
Hi, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, before we jump into Ebola and why, an example like that is relevant to every small business owner, even down to the small mom and pop and the local community, can you just tell us a little bit more about continuity planning and the work that you do?
Yes. Continuity planning is essentially bringing plans and procedures to companies that are pre-established that will help a company weather a disaster. So it's a whole plan and procedure that will allow them to know what's going to happen when a disaster strikes. So they're not running around and figuring out what to do on the fly. Mm-hmm. And it just makes for a more calmer experience, and the chances of recovery are tremendously great.
Okay, and then for CEOs, of course, they're asking, well, at my level, how can I merchandise this? How can I productize it? How can I market it? How can I bring it up day to day in conversations that I'm having with other decision makers who may be looking for the next company that has a plan in place to operate in case there is an outbreak?
Yes, well, as far as the day-to-day use for a continuity plan, it goes well beyond a disaster or a major disruption to an organization, because typically these plans are developed and they're great, but they typically still sit on a shelf. Mm-hmm. Well, there's so much more than that. When companies go to a vendor or a customer, especially at a time like this when Ebola is on everyone's mind, the question is, who's going to be affected by this? And if you can go to a key client and say, look, we've done our homework. Mm-hmm. We've thought about this pandemic. We have a plan in place. So in the event that our community is struck with this, we know what we're going to do. So you can count on us as a key vendor to continue to do business with us. Mm-hmm. And if you have that discussion with a key client, then they will have that conversation with your competitors and say, hey, by the way, do you have a plan in place? Mm-hmm. Well, gee, we don't. We haven't really gotten to thinking about that yet. Well, then guess where the business is going to go? You want to do business with those who have done their homework, who prepared for these daily events that may come across and damage our businesses.
Yeah, and Brian, is it expected that small business owners or small businesses would have a continuity plan, or are they still leaders of the pack when they do show proof that they've done the work before necessary?
This absolutely affects small businesses, and their need to prepare is just as critical as the Walmarts and the Targets and so forth. So even with certain regulations, banks are now requiring even their cleaning crew to have continuity plans.
Mm-hmm.
It's built into FINRA. So most cleaning crews for banks are small businesses, and these banks are asking these small businesses, where's your continuity plan? And so large companies want to do business with companies that have plans in place in the event of a disaster.
Yeah. And, I want to pull just some other stories from the headlines. What people may recognize or remember these things, especially in the communities where they are, and say, oh, so this is an example or this is a place to build upon. Say, for instance, with the health and wellness programs, I must applaud small business owners across the country who have begun to help their employees understand how to maintain their health so that they don't get to the point of extreme illness and they've got extended times off work and their operations are disrupted, and sometimes these employees aren't able to rejoin that particular job, and they've left the company sometimes searching or scrambling for a plan until they can stabilize their operations again. And so with these wellness programs that have been put in place, sometimes even something as simple as flu shot programs where you've got pharmacies that are coming on site and administering the shots there, or partnering pharmacies that are offering free programs. You've got some companies that have put in place fitness programs where employees can go and work out on site or get discounts to local gyms, all sorts of things to keep the workforce in top shape so that their operations are not interrupted, but also they've got a healthier and happier workforce. How can businesses build upon that when it comes to continuity planning and taking it even farther to protect other parts of the business and not just labor?
Yes. These companies that have these wellness programs are great because regardless of size, they get it.
Mm-hmm.
They get the fact that maybe perhaps providing a gym membership to its employees, that's going to, over time, that will reduce the sick days that are taken. By offering these flu shots to their employees, that reduces the sick days.
Mm-hmm.
So they get it. They get the investment if they make into these employees to reduce risk, that they will ultimately benefit not only as a stronger company, but a happier workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, that's a great start. And that is actually one module that we do look at when we do continuity planning. But there's so much more out there.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these companies, they're good. They're good companies. They're good. They're great CEOs. They know what to do. And every morning when they drive to work, they put their seatbelt on. Not because they're lousy drivers, but they know that there are external forces that could impact their commute to work that would result in a very bad day.
Mm-hmm.
So, wellness program is, yes, that's part of the seatbelt, but there are other things that could affect or impact a company that's beyond their control.
Yep.
Pandemic's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Weather events are another.
Yeah.
You have terrorists. You have companies that are controversial.
Mm-hmm.
You may not think that they're controversial.
Yeah.
But people are mad at them.
Yeah, precisely. Here's an example. Target and their compromised security of people's, private financial information. That's an emergency if I've ever seen one. What do you do in that instance? Do you have a plan in place to stay on track and not lose all of your customers because they completely panic and say, I'm going to Walmart?
Exactly. And just because it happened at Target doesn't mean it's not going to happen to small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And 60% of all small businesses that hit a data breach do go out of business. And this is on the FBI's radar. It's one of the top things the FBI is focused in on because this is how crimes are now being committed. So another module that we will look at with small businesses is it a value to them to look at catastrophic cyber insurance?
Mm-hmm.
And that does cover items such as these security breaches.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the work, say for instance, of the staff members that you would do to get into the nits, the nitty gritty or the nuts and bolts of that operation. Can you talk about that? Because I kind of see what you're talking about and what you do very similar to some of the work that I see on Oprah Winfrey's network when it comes to Undercover Boss and these CEOs that are going undercover into some of the trenches of their organizations where they normally may not spend a lot of time. They are discovering inefficiencies. They're discovering opportunities to capitalize on efficiencies and better position those things to their brand and to their customers. And so can you talk a little bit about how that looks for you and the work that you actually do once you get started working with the companies?
Yes, and that's a great example because that is the CEO coming down looking at the processes and procedures of a company to see if they're being followed. The whole premise of that show is that, no, they're not being followed. And so there's a disconnect between what's going on with the worker and what the CEO thinks is going on. Mm-hmm. And that's why that show is so successful. Now, there's always positive, warm fuzzies at the end of the show, but we do something similar. We go into a company, and yes, we brief the management as to what we're going to do. But the real work and the reality of what's going on with the company is actually happening at the worker level. So we need to understand, okay, what's going on? What are you doing? And more importantly, if this function goes away for a period of time, how long can it go without it actually impacting the process of the company or start damaging reputation and finances and so forth? So if you just take, for example, accounting, mm-hmm. Well, you have payroll every 2 weeks. Your vendors are on net 30. You got to pay your suppliers net 30 on suppliers, and then you got to collect money within 60, 90 days, whatever your terms are.
Yeah.
So we look at that and say, okay, if you're down for more than 30 days, what happens to payroll?
Yeah.
How do we get your employees paid
mm-hmm.
if you're not up every 2 weeks? What if you're down 60 days? How do you pay your vendors? And we go in and we do, we just look at what reality is. Well, most of our vendors are okay with us if we go net 60. And so, okay, now you have a plan so you can now afford to be down for 60 days because most of your vendors will work with you on that. Payroll, are you doing it in-house? Should you be looking at maybe using a service to do this on your behalf so you don't have that disruption? And now you can go 60 days without running payroll because somebody else is doing it for you.
Yeah. And all of that, the work that you've done regarding best practices, and I know that every company is different and every disaster, when they do hit, they are also different and unique. And in addition to that, when it comes to natural disasters or emergencies that, really are out of our control, some people look to agencies like FEMA and say, they're handling, and I know you've worked with FEMA and work with FEMA. And of course, people have their own opinions of FEMA, the old FEMA versus what I like to call the new FEMA, who has really, done an outstanding job in the latter part of their career in supporting emergency disasters. And so, how do you help small business owners take that and own it and say, yeah, we're not just going to wait for CDC to publish some reports on, any outbreaks, if there's any issue when it comes to medical disasters and so forth. How do you help small business owners take ownership of that and jump in on that conversation even while we're trying to determine if there's going to be a state of an emergency issued by the federal government or by the governor of a particular state?
Yes, and you're spot on with FEMA's evolution. FEMA gets it. They're working hard, and they have been working hard to make communities more resilient. And they understand that if FEMA can help small businesses get back online after a disaster, mm-hmm. it benefits the community. If a small business is up and running, the employees are reporting to work, and that now that takes the burden off the Salvation Army and Red Cross, mm-hmm. because now this family is working, and they're not a burden on the Red Cross. And now the Red Cross can focus in on those that now truly needed help once families start coming offline. But you also need grocery stores up and running. You
mm-hmm.
need 7-Eleven up and running.
Yep.
You need all these small businesses up and running. So now the first responders have resources to pull from. I mean, you got to buy food. You got to buy batteries.
Yep.
And so these are all small businesses that supply these.
Yep.
And so the gas stations need to be up and running. So FEMA has developed 3 standards, and they vary in complexity. And NFPA 1600 is probably the most suited for small businesses. But it essentially outlines a way for a small business to weather a disaster and put those plans and procedures in place. So when they do experience a disaster, they're back online quicker.
Yeah.
And so now a customer can go to a vendor and say, look, or a client and say, look, we have a FEMA-based disaster preparedness plan, and this will make us more resilient.
That's great. That's great. And do you offer those resources or access to those resources? Brian, how do you enter into that equation with helping them get started with that?
I do. What I do is I take all 3 standards, and I take the good bits out of each standard that applies to that company. So while one standard may say the C-suite shall commit $15,000 to the annual testing of this plan. Well, for a small business, that doesn't make sense, so I don't pull that part. From another standard, I'll put management will oversee certain elements of this continuity plan and invest time and invest labor. Well, that's a good thing, and that's reasonable for a small business to expect to do to maintain a plan. So I kind of cherry pick what's best for the business I'm dealing with from all 3 standards.
Okay, great. And so then, you still have that CEO, Brian, who's saying, I get it. I appreciate that. And, these headlines are beginning to make me feel a little nauseated. So I do need to focus on continuity planning, and I will get it done. And maybe they put it in their budget for next fiscal year, and they start working on it, starting January 1, if that's the year that they use. And of course, they're sitting around the table and going, but do we see any day-to-day benefits? Will we realize any return on our investment on a daily basis? What do you have to say to that?
Yes, there are many day-to-day based benefits to this, and we've already hit on the sales aspect. The continuity plan is a great sales tool, but it goes beyond that. Just this year, the insurance companies have recognized business continuity as a valuable resource or a valuable tool for discounts. We are now seeing anywhere from 3 to 9% discounts on general liability. So the insurance companies understand that if a business goes through a disaster, they're going to be down for a period of time, and now their business interruption insurance is going to kick in. If they can be down from not 60 days, but let's just say that they're back up and running in 30 days, well, that's a value to the insurance company. So they're recognizing that, and they're also now providing the discounts. With banks, 41% of all businesses that experience a disaster or a disruption will go out of business within 2 years.
Wow.
Now, that's different from the cyber attack number I cited earlier. But banks understand that if they have a small business that has, say, a $5 million loan over a 10-year period, if that business experiences a disaster or disruption in year 5, the bank knows that there's a 41% chance that business will go under and default on that loan in year 7.
Yeah.
So if you go to a bank to get a loan and you present that business continuity plan, the bank understands that now you're a better risk to insure.
Well,
so,
and have you had...
These are all benefits that you can use in your day-to-day business to not only make you more resilient, but to increase sales and to make you a better risk.
Yeah, and regarding the payment of the services that say you or a firm like yours would provide, have you seen any non-traditional approaches to securing funding for this? I mean, for a small business, depending upon the investment, it might be something that they don't have immediate access to capital to, although it's very important and they need to find it. But have you found ways to help them creatively solve that budget challenge?
Yes. And the reason this topic is not typically addressed is that nobody knocks on the door of a small business saying, I want to sell you a business continuity plan, because we know in our industry that small businesses typically cannot afford this. It typically starts around $25,000 and goes up. Target, Walmart are spending millions a year on their continuity plan. So typically it's a market that is just not financially feasible for a small business to engage in a $20,000-$30,000 process. So what we've come to realize is that as we've been doing this for some of these larger companies, we're seeing that we're actually saving them money. And there's enough money on the table that we uncover that it can actually pay for the continuity plan itself.
Wow.
So I've developed a shared risk methodology where I've reduced the entry point for the small business to an affordable point. And then as we go along the process, now they're still going to get the $25,000 product. That's not the problem. But as we go through, we're going to identify some savings. And we're confident enough that we will find enough to where, say if we can save them $50,000, they give me half that year one. And so now I've been paid for my services because I've created and developed and delivered a $25,000 package. And so now we've found 50. I've been paid for my work. But then the best part is, year 2, 3, and 4, they keep the savings.
Yeah.
So now this continuity plan has moved from the liability column over to the asset column.
Yeah, that's nice. Nice. And I mean, let me ask you, have you ever had, and I know you can't give names out, of course, and we wouldn't ask you to do that, but have you ever had any instances of a customer or a prospect who knew that it was important to do it, just couldn't secure the funding to take care of it, and then actually had a disruption in business and came back to you and worked with you to make sure that they just didn't have to go through that again?
Yes, and quite frankly, unfortunately, that's how I do develop most of my business.
Oh, no.
Folks I've spoken to in the past haven't engaged on the plan and have come back.
Mm-hmm.
I had one firm. It was right around the time of the derecho, and the day before the derecho, the warehouse where they stored all their documents had a roof collapse. The derecho came through, soaked all their documents, and their documents were a critical point of failure for them. Unfortunately, they experienced a loss, and they did recover, but now they engaged me.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate they had the loss before they had the plan.
Yeah.
In other cases, I've actually had banks pay for the continuity plans because they understand that this is that important for a small business to have. But I said it anecdotally because I can't speak for banks and them actually paying for it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get that. And it's a great thing to add to that business plan in the beginning, though. And of course, if we're doing our homework every year during our strategic annual meetings, then we're finding ways and opportunities to add to our budget the services that you're talking about. And so, are there ways for companies to just take a bite-sized, approach versus being able to take the whole thing on, just so that they are slowly building toward having a comprehensive solution?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that is a great model for companies to engage. The most cost-effective way for a business to develop a continuity plan is when they are small.
Mm-hmm.
And as they grow, the continuity plan grows with them. So if you are a $100 million company and decide, hey, I need to get a continuity plan, it's almost too late.
Yeah.
Because now you need to go back and reinvest and build that plan from scratch. If you do it when you're a smaller business and it's more affordable, then it's easier just to add to it. So companies may have one warehouse. Okay, so you have a continuity plan for that. Now you've grown and you're getting 2 and 3 warehouses. Well, guess what? You've already done the continuity plan for number 2 and 3,
mm-hmm.
and you just Xerox it off. So I don't. It's great if they can do it all at once, but if they can't, you know what? We can work with them and give them the level of resiliency that fits their budget.
Yeah, and then that small business owner, that CEO gets to wake up every morning knowing that I've got some protection aside from insurance, aside from some of the other things that we've talked about, but they've got a plan to combat the unexpected, whatever the unexpected would be. I mean, I think it would be a sad list that we build, when it comes to talking about all the unfortunate things that could happen. Just looking at the last 2 years of what's been trending in the news. But it's those exact things that represent examples of what could possibly happen in a neighborhood near you and I, and how we can take steps to protect our business, to protect ourselves, our families, our employees, and our shareholders or stakeholders, those folks who have invested into our companies and they're expecting us to be up every morning when the train leaves the station, ready to do business with the communities that we serve. And so I'd like to give you an opportunity to give some parting words, Brian, regarding what businesses can do if they want to get in touch with you and where you can start them with the process.
Yes, and it all starts with a conversation. And of course, I love to talk about the topic, and I would love to just give a high-level briefing to anyone that would be interested in just learning more about the topic. And I do understand that CEOs have very tolerance of risks, and just to have a conversation as to where we can actually pinpoint that. And they can always reach out to me via my website, which is www.standfastglobal.com. That's STANDFAST. And my email is always a great place to reach me, and I can always respond within 24 hours. And that is BMcCrane, BMCCRANE, @standfastglobal.com.
Great. Now, I would be remiss also if I didn't do what we've done for all of our guests and ask you, Brian, what's on your bucket list?
As far as my bucket list?
Yes.
Well, it's not Kilimanjaro. Actually, I would like to see more of Europe than just Ireland. That's my wife is from Ireland, and all of our vacation has been to Ireland, and I'm just very curious to see the rest of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that currently is my bucket list.
Well, do you breathe easy when you go on vacation, Brian? Or are you the type, because of the type of work that you do, is it always ever present in your mind that a shoe could drop?
It does, but I personally sleep easy. But it's, I always love the companies I deal with because I always learn something, and I always get better with the next client just because the people I work with are such great people. And so I do rest easy because I know that we're doing good work, and we're helping small businesses, and being a small business owner myself, it's a great place to be.
Well, there you have it, folks. Brian McCrane, President, Standfast Global, focusing on continuity planning. Get in touch with him. If you're interested, and I know you are interested in protecting your business and your customers' interests, your shareholders' interests, and all those people who support you and again are expecting you to turn the lights on every morning, ready to do business. Again, thank you very much for being our guest this week on Tuesday Branding and on Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett. Brian, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and we will see you soon on the next edition of Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett.
You've been listening to Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett, a Kickfannie production. Akia Garnett is a Kickfannie.com contributor, and she's CEO for Brand Builder and a national columnist for Minority Business Entrepreneur magazine, a leading source in supplier diversity and inclusion. Be sure to join Akia for Tuesday Branding on social media when she brings news from across all platforms for small business owners and entrepreneurs all day, starting with the Akia Garnett Show at 10 a.m. Eastern and Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett at 6 p.m. Eastern, ending with My Brand Chat on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. See the full Tuesday lineup at Kickfannie.com and KiaGarnett.com. And we'll see you next week on Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett.